So, hello, and welcome to the Government Contracting 2017 Summer Webinar Series. My name is Jennifer Schaus, and appreciate everybody taking the time out of their day to join us, along with Jason Lee, who's going to be presenting on articulating deliverables for winning proposals. We're excited to have everybody with us. This is a 7-week-long series. All of our webinars can be found on our website under the webinar section. The recordings will be posted the Monday following the webinar. So Monday of next week, all of the webinars from this week will be posted. And as I mentioned, they're all recorded. So in the event that you have to jump off early today, or there's something that that you see that you're not going to be able to make, please check back on our website. A little bit about us. We are based in downtown Washington, D.C., providing various services for government contractors, including capability statements, 8A certification, federal sales and business development, GSA schedules, contract admin, and so forth. We also host networking events in the Washington, D.C. area and sometimes out of state, as well as various seminars. You can check on our website under the events section for current and upcoming events and seminars. And you can also sign up for our newsletter, which is complimentary to stay abreast of various events that we're hosting. A little bit about me here, but more importantly, I'd rather dig into the meat of what we're talking about today on winning proposals, which is very timely considering that we're in the federal fourth quarter. So Jason, I'm going to hand you the floor and let you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background and your business and about winning proposals with our audience. So thanks again for joining us today, and the floor is all yours.
Well, thanks so much, Jennifer. I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to keynote this particular week of the webinar, and to thank you for hosting such a great series. Thanks so much for everybody for attending this call. Like Jennifer said, my name is Jason Lee, and my background is a mix between financial analysis and then in the government arena, looking at source selection management. I've mainly done that for a number of the security agencies, looking at both the Homeland Security component and the intelligence community. I've basically started my own firm just about a year ago called Incisive Intelligence Group. Our firm basically does a couple of different things. Number one is management consulting in process reengineering, looking at workflow, looking at organizational design. We also do proposal development, coaching, and strategy. We typically take an approach that looks at the content and the innovative ways to present that content as opposed to the actual writing, where other firms take a little bit more of a hired pen approach. We go at it from a more analytic-driven approach. Within this space, you know, we help federal government agencies, of course, but then also foundations and non-government organizations. So for anyone on the call who, you know, puts in for whether it be grants or standing solicitations that are out there on FedBizOps, we encourage you to give us a call. Without further ado, let's jump right into the material. Today, I want to talk to everybody about articulating clear and concise deliverables in your proposals, especially as it pertains to services. If you are looking to propose units or productized items, this will be very relevant as well, but this will be probably more value for those pitching services. let's talk a little bit about first kind of where proposals typically go wrong in terms of articulating deliverables. Uh, the major reason why a lot of proposals fall down is because of the reliance on marketing information, a lot of vague general information that's out there, particularly about the company and not so much about the solution. Other kinds of challenges are really the verbiage itself within the proposal, sometimes providing contradictory statements in there about what the deliverables are all about. And this usually is as a result of a lot of discussion that bidders have about what their product is not. They end up discussing the competition, what the other solutions out there in the state of the art, the marketplace are currently, and basically how their solution is not any of those things. That uses up a lot of valuable paper real estate where you could be really devoting that to your specific solution and kind of what your solution has that advances that state of the art. And that's really why a lot of different studies have shown, not one particular study in general, but a couple of the consulting firms in the Big Four, as well as some of the associations for proposal writers, have done some polls and have found out that the third top reason for proposals falling down is because of confusion about those deliverables. And that's behind basically, cost concerns and, of course, concerns with the technical volume. So there's basically 10 different things that you're going to really have to focus on, and you can break that up into 4 different questions that the funders will be essentially asking you when they review your proposal. The first question that you're likely going to hear is, what am I actually going to get for the money that I'm funding this project? Essentially, you want to message the tangibility of your solution. Just human nature, folks want to see what they can actually touch, what they can visualize, and what you're going to have to do is characterize what are the actual features of a particular service that you have. Or if it's an actual activity, if it's research, if it is doing a literature review, things that you can't really touch, you're going to have to articulate the aspect of what is actually the end result product of that. Is it additional knowledge? Will it be actually wrapped up into into kind of a white paper, some kind of vehicle that will actually reflect the knowledge that you're providing in that service? The second thing is to kind of estimate your value of that solution, and that really means what happens after they get the product into their hands. Is it scalable? Can they use this solution for additional similar hard problems after they have funded you? Or is it only a one-off to actually satisfy the specific requirements of an RFP or a BAA or other solicitation? So if you can articulate how your product or your service can be scalable across different problem sets, that is going to really help you sell the overall value of what you're offering. Let's move on to the next question that they're probably going to ask you when reviewing your proposal, and that's basically why your deliverable as compared to another proposal that we might actually get. And here you're going to want to emphasize the uniqueness of your service or product. The uniqueness would not just be features of it, but may actually be your technical approach. So if you are a big data scientist and you plan to use natural language processing as opposed to more of a structured-based, rules-based type of methodology, then you're going to want to cite that. So this way, a funder that's more interested in something that would handle unstructured text in this example would then understand that natural language processing, your particular methodology, would be more valuable than something that's more structured. You want to build a story, essentially, of how you're going to do it. Think of it as if you're a chef explaining a recipe. The ingredients are important of what you're going to put in there, but essentially the steps of how you're going to actually incorporate those ingredients are even more important. You want to basically walk through the funder step by step in essentially how from cradle to grave you're actually going to complete the task that they're asking for in the solicitation. this is going to do two things. One is allow the funder to understand that you know what you're talking about, that you're a subject matter expert in your domain. And secondly is showing your logic, that there is a progression. It's not just a promise of providing that deliverable, but it's actually showing how you're going to leverage that experience and turn it into technical execution. So that's going to fortify, again, your technical volume and make it consistent with your management volume when they see your work plan. And then finally, you're going to want to push the bounds of the state of the art. So this is going to really entail doing a little bit of market research of your competitors, but not just, again, their solutions and end products, but again, what is their methodology? What is their approach to putting together their solution and comparing those methodologies? That is actually more important than comparing the end deliverable. All right, let's move on to the next question that funders are likely to ask, and that is basically, will this solution be actually right for me? They want to see is, even though you might have a good idea, is it going to really scratch the itch? And in scratching the itch, there's three components to this. One is you're going to have to talk through a very brief, again, paper real estate is very finite, so you'll have to come up with a way to articulate a quick use case as an example of a problem that they might face relevant to the domain that's in the solicitation, and walk them through how your solution is going to scratch the itch of various different components of that hard problem. The second piece is the language that you use to appeal to the customer in terms of your effectiveness. So a lot of times, most folks will recommend that you focus on your verbs, different kind of action verbs to show. It's almost like a resume that you want to show that that you're doing action. But just as important as those verbs are adjectives. So things like thoroughly, comprehensively. You want to be very careful not to be too flowery. You want to make sure it's a specific adjective. And what you want to do here is repeat the same adjective. So use maybe 2 or 3, not a host of them, 2 or 3 across the document in the technical volume to ensure that you're actually emphasizing that as a particular thrust, if that's what you're going to do. It's going to get into their psychology without you having to directly state that you're going to be complete or thorough, but by using those adjectives in the line of talking about other components of the hard problem, this will actually send that message. And then finally, you want to put in specific metrics. So you don't want to just be broad and say, I believe that my service or my product is going to help your productivity raise it by 20% next year. That's going to be too vague because it's just a promise without a lot of empirical support to that. So it's going to be a little bit easier if you're running a something in the computational lane, something in the software development lane where you've got a lot of finite metrics. But even if you're dealing a little bit more in the social sciences with this greater subjectivity, hopefully you can come up with some benchmarks that are used across the industry and basically say how your solution is going to perform against those benchmarks and how you can actually improve those metrics and what you think that the future metric is going to look like after utilizing your service or your product. And then finally, let's move on to the last question, and that's basically, so what? What is the bottom line? Not only what am I getting for the money that we've asked before, but why do I want to care about this particular solution? And it's all about if you can articulate that your solution actually fits very well into a portfolio of other solutions that the funder is using already, or would fit in with other pursuits that they're doing mutually exclusively, trying to land other contracts and get other solutions in other lanes, if you will, and your product fits into that, you're going to be able to get a better chance of actually having a successful bid. Because the value there then is you're actually enabling other products, you're enabling other services. Along those same lines, you're going to want to stress your customization. A lot of times funders are concerned that a bidder will actually provide a generic solution that they're pitching to everyone, a canned solution where they say, we can bring in a couple of support folks once we've landed the contract, and then we can actually just tailor it to you, but basically it's a canned product. Instead, you're going to want to talk about how you read into the solicitation and how you actually altered the service or the product in a specific way after having read that solution. So you're actually telling them that you've gotten excited about the hard problem that they put out there. You are crafting the solution around a particular interesting activity that they are interested in actually solving, and you've built it against that requirement. So again, that personalization, even if it's not a large customization, is going to be something that I think that a funder is going to be very, very interested in. Okay, so basically those are the 4 questions and the 10 items under those 4 questions that you will need to look out for the most when designing your proposal. And I just wanted to end the session today with some generic advice for everyone, and that is in 3 lanes. Number 1 is when you're writing your technical volume, what you're going to want to do is provide key judgments, basically bullet points at the very beginning of highlights of what you think are the 3 or the 4 best things that your deliverables offer. Essentially, you want to do that because even though a lot of times funders are putting a page count, like I said, real estate is thin, people's attention may not be at the same level at the end of the technical volume as the beginning, and those bullet points will actually help you be sure that your message gets out there in terms of talking to those 10 different items under those 4 different questions. Second, you're going to want to put in supporting documentation that's in the form of visuals. So whether that be within the volumes themselves or actually in the appendices, you're wanting to rely on tables, charts, and pictures. Sounds very simple. It sounds advice that you probably have heard in other domains, but it's something that you're going to want to do because especially in a source selection panel that might be large, and that particularly pertains to federal government agencies, there's always going to be people who are not going to speak the same vernacular in that room. So if you have 7 or 8 different source selecting officials, one person may hone in on a sticking point, and that might actually change the conversation when they're making their final decision. So when you're using a visual, what you're going to be able to do is control that narrative a little bit because you're not really utilizing a technical term or something like that where a particular individual in that source selection room might not be familiar with. You're actually utilizing a picture, and that will represent for whatever is in their mind, the same terminology that might be in another source selector's mind. Number 3, the final point is being able to lay out your management volume in a consistent way with the technical volume. So when you're looking at the different milestones, you want to match that up with exactly your discussion about the different features, the uniqueness that we talked about, the value. So as you're building in those features, as you're building in that value, you want to reflect that within the different steps of the work plan and how they're actually going to be managed. That's going to be important because it's one thing to provide the verbiage that you will deliver something, which is a promise, but showing that it can realistically be delivered. So a lot of times consultants will tell you about cost realism, right? But there is such a thing as work plan realism as well, and not a lot of people focus on that. Sometimes they breeze through that management plan feeling like I'm just going to put out there what my Gantt chart's going to be. What are the different milestones, the different stages, all the way from the kickoff meeting all the way to the closeout, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Well, you're really going to have to line up each of those steps and show the technical steps in that work plan to showcase that you know that you've got a concerted plan of operation in terms of executing, especially if you're going to do a STEM project, a research and development kind of effort that's in the computational lane or the physical sciences where there's a lot of test and evaluation. All right, well, we're coming up to about 12:22 here, so I'm going to pitch everything back to Jennifer to close out the session. I really appreciate the time everyone has done in attending this call, and please feel free to reach out for us if you'd like to get more information on anything discussed here, or you'd like to get customized services regarding anything regarding proposal design, and especially in the area of deliverables. Thanks so much.
Jason, thanks so much for sharing your suggestions and advice. It was outstanding. outstanding insight into winning proposals, and obviously, as I mentioned earlier, very timely since we are in the federal fourth quarter. So everybody has Jason's information here on this slide. All of the webinars are recorded, so if you want to hear this again or take a look at the slides, we'll have those posted on Monday morning of next week. We still have about 5 more weeks of webinars to go. It's a webinar a day, every day at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Thanks again, Jason, and thanks to all the attendees for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, again, and hopefully I'll see everybody soon.